Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to begin by thanking my constituents in my riding of Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill for allowing me the opportunity to be their voice in this historic place. I am truly humbled by the honor that they have bestowed in me to represent them and our community in this, the home of democracy for Canada and for all Canadians. I know that the chair I sit in belongs to them. This is an honor and a privilege that I cherish, and I pledge to work tirelessly on their behalf to prove worthy of the trust they have placed in me. From the bottom of my heart, I thank my hard-working campaign team and the hundreds of volunteers who devoted so much of their precious time to help me spread a message of hope in these trying times. Mr. Speaker, it was in the third week of May in 1956 when my mother, Panayota, a young woman in her mid-20s, boarded the Queen Frederica for a transatlantic trip to Canada from her native country of Greece. Born in the 30s in the midst of the Great Depression, in a small village in the Spartan region of southern Greece, in a poor family, opportunities were virtually non-existent. The inevitable hardship that followed as the country was embroiled in the Second World War was only compounded by the Civil War that ensued in 1948. Like so many of her generation, my mother was deprived of an education. By the 1950s, it became evident to her that she did not have a future in her poor village in her own country. It was then that a friend told her about a country called Canada. At the time, the government of Canada had an immigration stream for domestics. Today, we call it the Live-in Caregiver Program. She applied and was one of 75 young women who courageously boarded the ship for Canada to work as a maid in a home. The Queen Frederica embarked on the 15-day journey, landing at Pier 21 in Halifax on the 6th of June. My mom walked off the ship with no money, carrying a small suitcase containing just a few clothing items and not knowing a word of the English or French language. In truth, though, Mr. Speaker, she carried a lot more than that. She brought with her the dream that in this new country that she had chosen, she would be welcomed, with hard work she would succeed, and her dreams would be fulfilled. She dreamt that she would meet someone, get married, have children, and grow a family in a country that promised every opportunity to educate her children, contribute to society, and to prosper. My father, John, also chose Canada as his home and landed at the same pier with the same dream. 1 year later, they met in Montreal. The following year, they were married. Born in Montreal, Mr. Speaker, my brothers and I grew up in a loving home guided by our Christian faith and by the values taught to us by our parents. It was in those early formative years that I learned the importance of civic engagement and realized that in addition to my own personal career path, I wanted to be of public service. For the past 35 years, I have volunteered in my community, and this ultimately led me to seeking an elected office. My election to Canada's Parliament in 2011 and again in 2025 would not have been possible if my parents had not instilled in me a deep love for our great country. Canada is indeed a country where everything is possible, even for two poor people who came here like so many others have, seeking a better life. For my family, my election was in part a fulfillment of a Canadian dream. Mr. Speaker, after 10 years of this tired Liberal government, Canada's promise that with hard work, anyone from anywhere can achieve anything has indeed been broken. Taxes are higher, interest rates are up, grocery prices have skyrocketed, home prices are up, and Canadians are left helpless as this Liberal government has lost its way. Unfortunately, the speech from the throne did very little to give people hope and to inspire optimism for better days ahead, Mr. Speaker. While there are some measures outlined that can be seen as steps in the right direction,
I regret to interrupt the member. It is now time for statements by members. The member will have about 5 minutes after question period is done. For now, it's statements by members. So before statements began in question period, the member for Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill had 5 minutes and 45 seconds. I invite him to continue. Resume the debate.
Mr. Speaker, while there are some measures outlined in the throne speech that could be seen as steps in the right direction, the government's agenda is clearly lacking and short on measurable actions that can produce meaningful and positive outcomes for Canadians. Moreover, Mr. Speaker, The throne speech is a blueprint intended to signal the direction and the focus of an incoming government. It is up to this place, the House of Commons, and all of us elected parliamentarians to review government programming with the objective of ensuring transparency and economic viability. Let's start with the need for a budget. Households have budgets, small businesses have budgets, corporations have budgets, charities have budgets. People routinely create a yearly budget as a prudent standard practice. The Liberal government's decision to not table a budget at this critical juncture for our country can best be described as irresponsible, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister touted his banking and business background as qualifying attributes for the office that he now holds. Can you imagine the response a Canadian would get if he or she were to approach their financial institution and applied for a loan with a caveat that they would provide their financial records and a budget 6 months after they receive the money? I would argue, Mr. Speaker, that the Prime Minister, his cabinet, and the Liberal caucus would do well to respect Parliament and present a budget before they leave on vacation. They should not be afraid of vigorous, insightful, and inspiring debate. I want to touch base on some issues that are important to my community and that were shared with me while campaigning, Mr. Speaker. Nestled in the heart of the GTA, the beautiful municipalities of Aurora and Richmond Hill have been fraught with crime. Record auto thefts, home invasions, violent smash and grab robberies are far too prevalent. The Liberal catch and release agenda has frustrated law enforcement agencies across the country. Even more glaring is the omission of investing further in the Canada Border and Service Agency to provide them with the tools to catch and stop the influx of illegal drugs and guns into our country. Again, law enforcement agencies from coast to coast to coast have repeatedly told us that the majority of the confiscated weapons used in violent crimes in our communities have illegally entered into our country. The Liberal government needs to get serious about crime and drugs ravaging our communities. Repealing Bill C-75, which gave high priority to releasing repeat violent offenders back into our communities and avoiding jail time, would be a good start, Mr. Speaker. Canadians deserve to feel safe in their communities, and sadly, this Liberal government is showing us once again that it will continue to take half measures and that are weak on crime. Speaking of half measures, the Liberals have now tabled a Ways and Means motion proposing 3 modest tax measures. But it doesn't go nearly far enough. The income tax cut, if one can even call it that, in practice won't even cover a cup of coffee a week. The industrial carbon tax will continue to make life more expensive for businesses and consumers. That remains. Residents in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill deserve better. We need a bigger tax cut, Mr. Speaker, that will make a real difference for their families. The carbon tax, the entire carbon tax, must entirely be repealed so industry can excel and residents can afford to live. One of the saddest conversations I had at the doorsteps was a lady who confided the following, and I quote, Mr. Speaker, "Sir, I am not a political person. I am a widow in my 80s. My husband and I bought this home, a modest bungalow, and we grew our family here. I worked all my life. I paid my taxes, and I am now on a modest fixed pension. But unfortunately, I cannot afford to eat the same way I was eating 3 years ago. So I'm eating less, and I'm eating different things because I want to continue living in my home." I would ask through you, Mr. Speaker, that members of this House reflect on the gravity of that statement. Young people are being saddled with an ever-growing national debt. Youth unemployment is once again on the rise. The Liberal policies have left them with little hope for their future, and the idea of achieving home ownership is but a dream. In closing, Mr. Speaker, there is much work to do. We can all do better. This government can start by doing a lot better than they have been doing over the last 10 years. I would like to thank my wife, Gail, my pillar of strength for the past 45 years, my children, Michael and Alicia, and my extended family for their love and support. Being here in Canada's Parliament is indeed a huge honor, and one that I will cherish every day as I walk into this historic chamber, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
Questions and comments?